ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish all of you and your families a great 2019. We've just celebrated Makar Sankranti in Maharashtra. And in different parts of the country, in different forms, the new year has been ushered in, whether it's Pongal in Tamil Nadu or Lodi in Delhi and Punjab. And it's this oneness across the length and breadth of the country that binds us together, the oneness of different cultures, the oneness of different streams of thought merging into that spirit which we find when it comes to working for India, when it comes to wishing a better future for this country. And in all these efforts, I think magazines and media houses play a very important role in connecting the dots across the country, putting down on paper different viewpoints, different inputs from all over, and certainly help us policymakers in our work, in whatever we are setting out to do. And I wish all of you participate in today's deliberations, and I do wish the editors will send us what comes out, what's the juice, what's the meat that comes out of today's deliberations, which can be of good use to us in our job in government. Thank you for your very good, kind comments about the work that's happened and about the way forward. I don't know whether you've pressed the right number when you're talking about changes in the tax structure and making it more progressive. But I couldn't disagree with you. I think it makes eminent sense. The Honourable Finance Minister has introduced a new tax structure for the smaller companies with a turnover up to 250 crores. Initially, I think at 25%. And the directional aim of this government is to look at bringing down all taxes, whether direct or indirect, as the tax collections improve, as there's more buoyancy on the tax front, and as more and more of the Indian economy becomes formal, engages with the tax authorities, and the integrity levels that we are trying to introduce in government percolate down to even lower levels in government and also in the business world. Why I mentioned I wished I could attend your session, Dr. Stewart, is that way back in 1988, 88 or 89, 89 actually to be precise, I had been admitted at the Wharton Business School where you did your MBA to pursue a PhD program on strategy. At that point of time, we had some issues in our business, some labor trouble had cropped up, and I was not able to join the program. I don't know if Dr. Harbir Singh is still teaching there. He was to be my guide and professor. He had admitted me. And I took a gap year, and I don't know whether that was the worst decision that I took in my life, because after that gap year, I never went back to school. And then I had another mishap, not exactly with the UPenn, but an unfortunate incident where a couple of months ago, I reached the university to receive an award from the Kleinman Center on Energy Policy. It was on Dasara, and I had a festival that we celebrate in India. And I had barely reached there in the morning hours, and I had a packed day of 8 or 10 programs when the unfortunate mishap where some people were trespassing on the railways, were standing on the rail tracks and watching the Dasara celebrations, were run down in a very unfortunate, tragic incident. And therefore I had to rush back from Philadelphia without even accepting that award. And therefore I'm very, very scared whenever I brush shoulders with the University of Pennsylvania. Something like a Hindi movie that you would not be aware of, but some of us in this room would know, where I think Rani Mukherjee and who was the actor? The guy who's married to Kareena probably, Saif. Saif and Rani Mukherjee, we had these two in a movie where every time they bump into each other, something is going to go wrong. And I think it's called Hum Log. Hum Tum, sorry, Hum Tum. So I was just, as I was hearing you speak, I was wondering what the rest of the day holds for me today. But if one was to look at this 5-year period of this government, in its first term, it has focused its energies on the building blocks, on setting up the agenda of creating that framework, which I think was necessary to prepare India for a sustained period of growth, which was necessary to prepare India and its acceptability in the whole wide world, which was necessary to instill confidence in our people that India can aspire for leadership in the world, can aspire for a better future for the people of India. After all, the $5 trillion economy that Mr. Vaidyanathan just talked about is possible in two ways. One can hugely build up debt on the country's balance sheet and the company's balance sheets, all the business balance sheets. One can hugely build up fiscal deficits and set the country in a path of weak financials and certainly show growth in the short run. But to sustain that in the long run, one will have to have very strong macro fundamentals in place. One will have to have strong leadership in place. One will have to ensure the sustainability of both the economy and the environment. And one will also have to ensure that we are recognized in the world as an honest country, as a country where business can be done with equal opportunity for everybody, where business is respected and where business is encouraged to integrate with a corruption-free environment. And I think that has been the hallmark of this government in its first term, focusing on building that framework, along with ensuring that every effort of the government should be to also lift the quality of life, improve the quality of life of the teeming millions who have in some sense remained left behind. And I think all of this calls for a lot of negotiation. You are continuously negotiating within government. You're continuously negotiating with the different stakeholders in the country, the people of India, the political establishment, the judiciary, the media houses or the media groups, and you're negotiating to figure out what's that best path which will be acceptable to all these different streams, or at least finding the minimum common denominator and working your way through to get more acceptability. Take the GST, for example, which Mr. Vaidyanathan just talked about. Now, very clearly, it's something which was pending since the last 15 years. The first time the concept was thrown open was in 2003. But earlier governments could not negotiate and successfully implement GST because the negotiation didn't come from a position of strength. The negotiation didn't come with credibility and commitment that is required in any negotiation to be successful. And possibly the negotiation didn't come from a clean heart, where you have a track record of fulfilling past commitments and are trusted for the commitments that you make when you're trying to do a game-changing reform like GST. And why I took that example from Mr. Vaidyanathan's talk was that I believe Prime Minister Modi has given that leading edge to India that we had required for a very, very long time. In one sense, if you want to win a race, you don't have to start first always, but you've got to end first. You've got to reach your end goals first. Very often it's not the person who kick-started and took up the race first, but it's somebody who plans well, somebody who prepares well, who has a roadmap, who has a vision, who has the qualities to take the race forward, who wins, particularly a marathon. And I can list out a series of measures that this government has taken and a series of outcomes because of those measures that have been the differentiating factor between erstwhile governments and the last 5 years that we have been in office. In fact, speed, skill and scale was a mantra that Prime Minister Modi used to talk about when he was in government in Gujarat. We've tried to bring that to the working of the government in India, and I think to good effect. There were a number of projects that used to take years and years, languish for years, but never get completed, never get implemented, causing huge cost overruns, causing delays in their ability to serve the people of India, causing dissatisfaction, particularly in rural India, eastern parts of India, or in the hill states or the sensitive northeastern states or the state of Jammu Kashmir. There were so many issues that over the years we had tended to just delay and allow them to fester on. With this government took up on a mission mode and completed in a time-bound manner. I remember we had the commitment, which has been pending for probably 43 years, to bring one rank, one pension to all those who serve in the armed forces as a mark of respect and a commitment of the people of India for a better future, for a better social security, for the people in uniform who have honorably protected the boundaries of India. It took 43 years for this nation and a Modi government to come in to actually implement it and start dispersing pensions on the one rank, one pension principle for the last now for 4 years and continuing. It was a large cost on the exchequer, but a cost which I think they deserved, which I think was a commitment of the people of India. And like that, we saw so many different projects. In the railways, for example, there are 1,000+ projects which had remained pending. We just completed the Bogibeel Bridge. It's the longest road-cum-rail bridge, I think, in all of Asia, which we completed in December. On the 25th of December, it was dedicated to the nation. It had started somewhere in 1996. The funding for it was finally provided by Mr. Vajpayee when he was Prime Minister some 15, 18 years ago. But very little work had happened on the ground when we came into office in 2014. But an aggressive push helped us complete that project, and it has a game-changing dimension for the people of Assam, for the people of Arunachal Pradesh, for the Northeast, and for the armed forces who need to reach the border very quickly in the times of emergency, in the times of distress. And fortunately, we have Mr. Prabhu here, who was handling the railway portfolio in a very outstanding fashion, who really gave a thrust to this Bogibeel project. and provided the funds, provided the leadership required to complete a project in time. And we were able to actually implement it. Similarly, the Train 18 project, which he initiated when he was railway minister, we were able to complete in a time-bound manner. And for the first time in 50 years, the Indian Railways has developed a train set which is completely indigenous, designed in India, and made in a record time of 18 months, and truly will be the defining feature of the changing way Indian Railways will serve the passengers. And we have a pretty big share of passengers traveling in the rail through the year. We have about 8 billion passengers going through the rail network every year. And I can keep reading out a number of steps, whether it's in the finance world, the Benami Act, Benami Properties Act, for example, passed some 18 odd years ago, but never implemented, or 28 years ago, but we had to only notify the rules which were not done. And we notified them and implemented it. And we are seeing people with Benami properties being actually prosecuted, being actually brought to book. I remember the Western Expressway, which is on the periphery of Delhi, which had been pending for about 15 years, which Mr. Nitin Gadkari completed, will completely change the travel dynamics of New Delhi, the national capital, but took us 15 years. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has been an effort of this government to change the way projects are conceptualized, finalized, planned, and then implemented. In some sense, learning from the Japanese example, where I think they take more time in the planning and structuring of the design of the project, possibly than in actual implementation on the ground. And this, I think, you would observe in any of the projects that this government took up. If I can highlight a few initiatives, you just mentioned about the LED bulb program. Now, the LED bulb on the face of it looks like a simple bulb emitting illumination for the room or for the country. But when I put it in the right perspective, we launched this project in January 2015, 5th of January 2015. We set before us a target to distribute 770 million LED bulbs in the country in 4 years, and we had estimated that will by and large replace all the incandescent bulbs which we've been using for donkey's years, and therefore save electricity, reduce the energy bills of the people, and reduce pollution, reduce the impact on environment because of higher consumption of electricity. Most people either ridiculed it or were in a state of disbelief that this is at all possible. I'm happy to report to you, ladies and gentlemen, we gave out the first bulb on 1st May 2015. We have not even completed 4 years of that project. And the country today has already seen the sale or distribution of 1.3 billion LED bulbs in less than 4 years. Almost twice the original number we started off with. And I think by the time we complete the 4 years, it'll be twice what we had originally envisaged, thereby saving nearly 40,000 crores, that's about $6 billion of electricity bills every year, which the consumers of India are paying, reducing carbon emissions by about 80 million tons every year because of reduced requirement for electricity, and has saved the nation about $20 billion of additional investment which would otherwise be required to provide that kind of energy every year. Of course, I can go into much more detail about the peak loads being reduced, which, and since Mr. Prabhu and I both also shared the power portfolio, he was the original reformer in the power sector in the Vajpayee government, who really brought in the first wave of reform in the power sector. It was truly a privilege for me that I could learn from his experiences and bring in these kind of projects into the country. But the scale, ladies and gentlemen, helped us to bring down the cost of LED lighting by about 87%. So a bulb which used to cost to the government of India when we bought it about 310 Indian rupees, the government would finally purchase it at about 40-45 rupees. And this reduction in pricing not only helped the people of India to use LED bulbs in a big way, but has now become a project which the world is embracing. So everywhere in the world that I go, if I'm engaging with the power ministers in my earlier role, one comment was for sure that India led the world in making LEDs a household feature. India led the world to bring down prices of LEDs. India led the world in making the world a better place to live in, thereby reducing carbon emissions, reducing the energy needs of almost every country in the world. And this price reduction was possible only because we implemented to scale, implemented fast in a time-bound manner, and of course implemented honestly. Another project that may not have much resonance with many of you here who would not have faced the ignominy of living without electricity, living without a toilet, not having clean cooking facilities at home. It's something which many of us in this room may never have experienced. Madam Mahalakshmi asked me to step onto the hills over there outside the room and make a wish. Many people are superstitious of sharing their wish, but I don't hesitate. I have no hesitation in telling you that I only wish that as we dream of a new India, as we aspire for a better India for every citizen of this country, as we wish that every citizen has a roof, has shelter over his head, has electricity 24/7, has a toilet in his home, clean drinking water, good healthcare facilities, quality education, digital connectivity. I think if we can all collectively work to meet that goal, and we've set an aggressive timeline of 15th August 2022, when India turns 75. If we can achieve that in this defined time frame, I think there can be no better aspiration, there can be no better future to look forward to, no better dream to have, as I did over there, than to see that developed India, an India where every citizen has at least the basic amenities taken care of. And that's the India that we have been trying to work on. That's the India where every rupee of tax that all of you are paying is being spent for. That's the India which funds Saubhagya program, under which we've ensured that every willing consumer in this country is guaranteed and has been given an electricity connection. We have the last couple of million or so left, where also we are actually reaching out to people. We are not sitting in the office and asking people to come and take an electricity connection. Our teams are fanning out into the villages to make sure that every willing consumer at least fills in just a short half a page as an application, and we can guarantee him an electricity connection and give it to him. That's the effort that has been put in over the last 4 years under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to ensure that sanitation standards in India go up and I'm happy to report to you that as against 1 out of 3 women having the facility of a toilet in India, we had only 34% sanitation coverage in India in 2014. Today it is 95%. We've built nearly 9.5 crore. 95 million toilets have been built in the last 4 years to give our sisters, our mothers, a life of dignity. It's a matter of shame for all of us collectively as Indians that it took us 70 years to achieve that. Most women in this country, particularly in rural India, and also in many of our slum areas in the cities, used to cook using coal, using wood, fig leaves. Some reports suggest that nearly 400 cigarettes worth of smoke were being pumped into a woman's body and the family's body living in their home. After all, this smoke would be in the atmosphere. The country had only about 130 million families who had LPG connections in 2014. I'm happy to share with you, we've added another 120 million homes who have today got a cooking gas LPG connection. We added more LPG connections in 4.5 years than were probably given out in the last 40 or 50 years. And I think in the next 6 to 8 months, there will be no home in this country which will be deprived of clean cooking facility using an LPG cylinder. And our next step is to make sure that we can provide that through piped gas so that ultimately all our homes can be connected through piped gas, like it would be in any part of the developed world. And I can go on and on about it. We've built about 12.5 million homes in the last 4.5 years, as against a typical 2.5 million homes built in the 5 years before that for the poor of India. In addition to that, we've come up with a program where for the common man, the middle class, 6.5% interest subvention, a subsidy amounting to 6.5% on a loan up to 6 lakh rupees is provided. And a typical small home for a common middle class person may not be in Mumbai, but most parts of India would not cost more than 9 lakhs, 10 lakh rupees. We are trying to empower our middle class to become homeowners and ensure that in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll have everybody having a shelter over his head. And this is what we believe is the aspiration of India. This is what we believe is essential for businesses to prosper. Because a happy population, a population whose basic needs are met, will provide us that happy workforce, will provide us skilled manpower, will provide us people who are educated, will provide us people who are healthy. The healthcare program is going to cover 500 million people with free healthcare. And many of us here may be aware that many families would go into distress for lack of ability to pay for healthcare. Many middle class families would get into penury because they couldn't afford healthcare. And I think that's the challenge, that's the commitment with which we have set out. Very often making very ambitious programs, very ambitious goals. Many times it seems impossible whether we'll be able to achieve that. But I think it's important, and that's the leading edge that I think we all desire to see in business, in politics, in government, in every walk of life. The desire to dream big, the desire to aspire for big goals, the desire to have very audacious ambitions, very large targets. Because unless we dream and unless we dare to dream big, we certainly are not going to be able to see a new India. We are certainly not going to be able to meet the aspirations of a new India, of a youthful India, an India which is connected to the global world, an India which is integrating with the world, particularly through the advent of digital technologies. And I'm sure with the collective effort of all sections of society, with the effort of business, with the effort of government, with the effort of media, with the effort of collective effort of all of us in this room, there is no dream that we cannot fulfill. There is no promise that needs to remain unkept. Let us go for an India where every citizen gets the basic needs of life, where every Indian knows that he has an equal opportunity, where every Indian knows that the country and the people of the country care for a united, for a strong India whose boundaries are secure, whose people live with the highest degree of social security, physical security, whose entire life should be focused on a better future for those who possibly could not board the train. I think most of us in this room also may have some time or the other had humble backgrounds, may have come from some village, may have come from some smaller past. My own father, for instance, studied under street lights to secure his engineering degree. I often used to joke that maybe Mr. Modi made me the power minister knowing that background, since they were colleagues, and gave me the job to ensure that every citizen of this country gets electricity. No child has to study under a street light ever again. No woman has to be embarrassed and cannot use the toilet between sunrise and sunset in this country ever again. No child is deprived of quality education, or no elderly is ever missing out on good health care in this country. And I'm sure that dream is something that we can all agree upon. And that's something which will take this country to those heights of development that Mr. Vaidyanathan talked of. I don't think economic development can ever be the only single goal of any country. A harmonious social environment, a harmonious human environment in the country is a prerequisite to make India one of the greatest countries in the world, to bring not that $5 trillion economy to India, but to aspire to be the world's largest economy, to overtake all the other economies in the world. And I think we as Indians should collectively be aspiring to once again make India that Sone ki Chidiya, that golden bird that we at once upon a time are proud to have inherited. I think we are lucky, we are very fortunate to have a rich legacy, a rich heritage behind us. Let's bring back that glory to India. Let's collectively work to make India a superpower. As they say in the Onida ad, neighbors envy, but owners pride. Thank you.